Marvel hasn't cooked in years, but X-Men 97 was so good, professional haters are now lining up to sing its praises. Calling this show an achievement wouldn't do it justice. Like, I came into the show with no expectations other than, oh great, more IP, but after one episode, I was hooked. As 97 is the most uncut take on the X-Men franchise that we have ever gotten, embracing the weird, the melodrama, and the heart, all while committing to its original premise and giving a voice to the oppressed and shouting it so loud that even the fake X fans couldn't ignore what was being said. After that, tied all together with great writing, animation, and fights that'll put some other shows to shame, X-Men 97 is one of my favorite shows of the year, as after years, a franchise all about the outsiders of society finally stopped standing off its edges for general audiences and shows us why that's the best thing for everybody. I'm Sarcastic, of course, and today we're going to be talking about X-Men 97, and of course we gotta do that guitar riff. Now this is going to be a spoiler-free review till we start talking about specifics that didn't get spoiled by the trailer.
Everything he fought for now belongs to me.
This story is the continuation of the 90s cartoon of the X-Men fighting the bad guys, going through the growing pains of a world that seems to be growing to accept mutants, only for things to go south immediately as, yeah, the X-Men's main enemy Magneto is now in charge. Because of course Charles Xavier would leave everything to his ex. So now everyone is on edge as they wait for shit to hit the fan, and every second we spend waiting is spent gloriously. But to answer the question a lot of you are probably asking, can you watch this series without seeing the original X-Men cartoon? As yeah, this is a continuation. Now, in my less than humble opinion, I think you'll be fine. This does technically take place after all the events of the original, but 97 does a good enough job explaining or implying information that I do think even the uninitiated will be able to handle or understand what's going on. If you have even a passing knowledge of the X-Men series, I think you'll be fine. That said, this series is still a lot, and I mean that in that the world is wild. We'll jump from stories about prejudice in space, politics, time travel, only for there to be suddenly a literal demon in the room. X-Men 97 embraces the everything in the kitchen sink approach to comics, where you just gotta roll with whatever it gives you. As at the end of the day, what it's giving you is greatness. I do feel like this could be a deal breaker for some people, as stories tend to be a lot bigger on world building lately. They can't be so wild and fun with things. But for X-Men, I feel like the pulp, the everything, just the wild adventures we get into, all of it fits here, even if yeah, this is some whiplash. Anyone can watch this show, you just gotta be ready for it, as this is a story already in motion, filled with all the other superheroes, and I personally can just appreciate it. Okay, we're just gonna keep going forward. Now let's move on to the actual review. Now usually I like to break this up between what I liked and what I didn't, but in this case, truly, I barely have anything negative to say about 97. Some personal taste things here and there, but on the whole, I feel like everything here is either good or great, and I have nothing to really complain about. So let's just skip the decking and jump to me talking about why it rocks. And let's start with the animation. '97 said watch this to everyone who said it'd be hard to make a super strong person with flight just have their fights be interesting. Well, no, sorry Invincible fans, I like both, but there's no contest between who did it better here. From just a pure spectacle standpoint, 97 is some of the best fights we've gotten in Western animation in a hot second. As a direction, the sheer sense of speed, scale, and impact, this show makes these fights feel like the comics come to life, and it is everything I could have hoped for. There is not a single person on the team who doesn't get a moment to look cool, and none of them ever feel like dead weight. From Morph being able to turn to more cameos that never fail to impress, Rogue being a menace at all times, to Cyclops not being a joke for once, showing off just the crazy ways he can use his powers when you remember that these isn't heat vision but kinetic beams, how he can use them to slide on floors, bank his shots, and even just lay out racists with his bare hands. Just the sheer variety of ways people get to use their powers and fight is just one of the constant treats of X-Men. And regardless of what happens, we are winning, as these fights are amazing. These fights are some of the best in superhero media, and I do not say that lightly. But while all the fictional hands getting thrown does tend to consume people's attention, the quieter moments of the show deserve some love as well. This is a beautiful show. They have somehow managed to copy the style of the original and make it their own, with tons of great visual touches to create a sense of continuity with a flawed but endearing Saturday morning cartoon, taking the flaws of the original style in that process of animation, then incorporating it into the new look, like the slight 3D effect on characters or the crunchy background that feels like the dust on the original animation cells when they were taking the picture for film. 97 is a love letter to the original, and it does so without ever giving you the sense oh, they're trying to fix or improve what wasn't broken, which, to be fair, there was some jank in the original, as they just didn't have enough money. Instead, incorporating the jank to create something that looks as amazing as the original felt to us as kids. But looks can also be deceiving, and just because the fights are great doesn't mean that the rest of the story isn't undercooked slop. Thankfully, this show doesn't have that problem, as it's got the substance to match its style.
I am trying to be better. Please, do not make me let you down.
The writing for this show is so fucking good. I especially think it's fantastic given the restrictions it placed on itself. Personally, I think I enjoyed X-Men 97 more than Invincible Season 2. Thanks to Invincible's episodes being longer with more focus on specific characters, I still think I'm more invested in its characters than in 97's. But for what X-Men is, a genuine throwback to episodic shows where we'll get what feels like wild side adventures while the character's personal drama is the through line for the whole season till the much bigger thing pops up. I think for what it's going for, it handled all of it immaculately, as these characters are messy, which is the true staple of any true X-Men story. People want to avoid this label, but comics, Marvel Comics especially, are soap operas. They're long-running stories with character drama about who's sleeping with who, crazy reveals, twists and turns, with no one being chill about any of it. And I am living for all of it. As keep this in perspective, we have a love triangle and a love pentagon in this show, and none of them suck. 97 revels in the melodrama that is X-Men Comics, or as they really should be called, the X-dating pool. Everyone has dated just about everyone here, so seeing this show bring that energy, then handle it so well was just a delight to me personally, as it so perfectly captures the sappy heart of these characters, setting us up to have fun, to wince, then get blindsided by its actually horrific moments and dark subject matter. This show wouldn't hit nearly as hard if it wasn't for all this melodrama, as to me, all this melodrama just highlights just why these X stories work so well, and I think that's because these are always personal stories. This isn't just a story about prejudice or some nebulous event. These stories are deeply rooted in who these characters are and how they are affected by these things. And if you don't care about who the person is, then the audience might struggle to care. But in focusing in on the characters, bringing the topics down to a personal level, seeing how these experiences affected them, it gets us to empathize and understand a situation that the audience might never personally experience. This is why going the soap opera route is almost always the right call when it comes to X-Men stories, as it keeps things tied to the characters whose experiences we need to understand. The writing does not miss with any of these people. You can question just the logistics of how some of these things happen, or be overwhelmed by just how many balls are in the air. As to be fair, this season does have an element of, oh, the X-Men's greatest hits. But all tied together, I think it tells a compelling story that never failed to put a smile on my face or a hand over my mouth at the sheer insanity of what I was witnessing. I'm gonna save the character or just my rambles for its own section, but everyone here was done justice.
Gotta do this by the book, Rogue. Right now, my hands are tied.
Maybe minus Captain America, but that is its own can of worms. Though a special mention has to go out to Cyclops, who after years of being portrayed as the guy Logan cucks, Scott finally feels like he's getting his flowers, becoming an interesting character in his own right, which is amazing, as now people can really see him for who he is and realize that he sucks for other reasons. Also, while I'm in the neighborhood, thank God Wolverine takes a backseat in this season. He's still here and doing great work, but he is firmly in the back of the classroom, not doing too much, as he does not need to be the main fucking character for the 1,100th time. I love him too, but his market is oversaturated, and it's nice to see literally anyone else get the spotlight, as they have been underfed for so long.
No, don't! I surrender!
Not.
Also, I have to throw this bone out there as well. The dialogue for this series is really good. There's just something a little fun about a show letting its characters be a little bit flowery with its language. They're not trying to sound realistic or pretend they're from the 90s still. It's its own unique voice with tons of fun alliteration and deliveries that make this show feel like an evolved form of the original Saturday morning cartoon, where lines will have the subtlety of a brick, but they cut to the core issues of the characters. I think it's okay for a show to have people talk like they're a little self-important. It can be fun and a great breath of fresh air, as so many stories right now feel like they're just trying to fill space by having constant chatter. Some of the voice acting took a quick second for me to get used to, but as soon as I was like, okay, this is what we're doing, I was on board till the end. As when these people start monologuing, it hits like nothing else. Also, we gotta thank this show for separating the fake X-Men fans from the real ones, as the X-Men have always been political. The X-Men have always been an allegory for oppressed groups, but over the years, it feels like that aspect has kind of gotten downplayed in certain stories, while in others, it feels like the story that it's trying to tell in the messaging, it's lacking in teeth or substance. So much so that people who are a little bit bigoted won't see themselves in the story being betrayed, so it never really makes them go, oh.
Are we the baddies?
So this show, for being just so explicit about what it's trying to say and who it's saying it to, I appreciate as, yeah, we in this time right now really need it more than ever. Like that whole ass speech by the mutant racists about how normal people suffer just like mutants, we just whine less, and that's their problem with the mutants. It's like, oh, we're not bigots, it's just these other people, they're too loud about who they are. And mind you, this man was saying this while trying to kill another man and incite a riot to make it happen. And he was also kidnapping kids. But other people online were really going, oh, he's got a point though, when no, he doesn't. And these conversations are great, as it really does separate those who actually believe in what the X-Men believe and who just likes cool people with powers. As what this show is really talking about here is just that accurate way just shitty people who see multiple groups are suffering, and rather than acknowledging that and acknowledging how the system is making all of them miserable, shitty people will blame and hate those who are most at risk, hence being forced to advocate for themselves, and then calling that a problem and calling them too preachy. When no, it's bigger than that, but it's easier and requires less self-reflection to blame marginalized groups for societal problems. This show is full of moments like this, where I can hear people saying, oh no, this character has a point, and suggest that mutants should hide who they are because it's more convenient and rocks the boat less. When no, we're not supposed to agree with these people. We understand why they might feel like this, but if it all hinges on mutants not being themselves so other people can feel comfortable and not have to confront anything, can you really say that these half measures aren't part of the problem?
Look like everyone else.
Because we shouldn't have to.
Sorry if I'm harping on for this for just a little bit too long. I know some people don't like politics in their stories, but to me, X-Men was created as an allegory for civil rights in the 60s, expanded to include queer people almost immediately, with the 90s having an AIDS epidemic allegory in the legacy virus. X-Men as a franchise has always been political and advocating for the oppressed. So if you don't want explicit politics in your media, I can't fathom why you would pick the X-Men.
Perhaps the professor's vision for the future was too nearsighted, and begging for your tolerance was our first mistake.
X-Men 97 is peak X-Men. You don't have to watch the original to love it. This show, to me, is the complete package, with great action, great writing, and tons of fun characters, with this show being able to go places I didn't think Disney would allow. So if you're unsure of this show, watch till about midway-ish, and after things, you'll know for sure if you're hooked or not, as this show starts crazy and only gets wilder from there. And from here on out, we'll just be gushing about spoilers, so step out if you haven't seen already. I'm recommending it. Like, share, and subscribe, then go watch and come back. Again, this show was messy, and Gambit was a stronger man than me, cause I would have blown myself up right then and there if my ex broke up with me, then immediately showed up to the party dancing with her gilf. Though to be fair, Gambit did end up doing that.
Remember it.
Gambit died still thinking that Rogue chose Magneto over him, and I'm never going to be okay with that. This though is the kind of shit I love X-Men for. That said, I specifically love the adaptations more than anything else. As comics, great, they're fun. They are also a clusterfuck of last-minute retcons caused by too many cooks in the kitchen and it going on for so long. So having an adaptation is nice, as it's able to take elements that kinda worked in the original and can then just need to be streamlined into something just a little bit more palatable and makes just a whole lot more sense. Like, Rogue and Magneto being a thing
What the fuck, bro?
But the fact that it works here is kind of a miracle, that this love triangle between Rogue, her main guy, Gambit, someone who basically dates her in every other adaptation, and have it be legitimately like, okay, no, she might actually choose Magneto over him is crazy to me. This is the kind of tawdry romance you'd find at an airport, and while it is, well, you just have to go along for the ride, I personally am here for it, as it takes this weird piece of X-Men lore and puts it at the heart of one of the most heartbreaking episodes in the series. The attack on Genosha, Magneto finally becoming a good guy, Rogue feeling torn between what she wants and what she needs, her desire for physical intimacy and faith in Magneto versus her love for Gambit. Everything is going on at once, with us getting whipped between moments, setting the stakes till that deck of cards comes crumbling down. Gambit as a character lived and died by rule of cool, so him going out this way worked perfectly, with us then getting a guilt-ridden Rogue going on a brutal revenge quest.
Easy, boy. Sugar.
Rogue refusing to let Trask end it so that she could do it herself was the holy shit moment that I didn't know I needed. Rogue in any other story would have been my #1 favorite character, but this season is so stacked with great characters and great payoff that it's honestly hard for me to pick one, at least one that isn't named Magneto.
Magneto was right.
Enough.
Now, people saying Magneto was right is gonna get real annoying real quick, but I do think there's something to be said about just how this story was able to take a character that most people are able to sympathize with. Here, you fully understand why he's doing what he's doing and see why it might be justified. There's something beautifully horrific as we see a man try and choose a more peaceful path, only for the world to be as ugly as he believed it to be, so he got ugly back. I think in another story, I would have rolled my eyes and just the thing that caused the character to break, thinking that, okay, this is just over-the-top evil. But here, while this is one of the main questions of the series, so it feels very appropriate, I think the attack on Genosha, it mirrors how people like, I could look up her name, but Karen over here will side with extremists and governments will just go along out of a sense of commonality. And yeah, we have common cause, we gotta protect ourselves at the expense of others, only to go Pikachu face when the extremist chooses an extreme option. This is over the top, and shit like this sadly happens all the time, and it fits into Magneto's personal history of being a victim of mass violence. The fact that he watched a leech die and say everything was gonna be okay, only for him to have to keep living after watching everyone else go. Yeah, that will break a person and convince them that the only world they'll be safe in is the one where they are in a position of strength, and everyone else can go to hell. Magneto is just too good in this series, the performance is immaculate, his grievances are being treated as legitimate, and to top it all off, giving Professor X some much needed slander.
Shut up.
Now, I'm biased because even if I'm not some Magneto fanboy, I'm down for anyone to tell Professor X to go fuck himself. I've never heard a bad thing about him that I wasn't willing to believe just out of hand, even when I know, yeah, he's morally correct more often than not, but it's just cathartic to see a story push back against his ideas, forcing him to dig in his heels about his beliefs, while having his methods questioned by his former supporters. As yeah, his dream is a good one, but seeing him try and make it work in practice is where things actually get interesting. I like seeing the professor being called out for his shit, well-intentioned or not, that he was chilling with his space life while horrible things were happening on Earth. It's just great to see the acknowledgement that this dude is flawed as everyone else. He cares, but just like Magneto trying to protect mutants, there's consequences to how they try and defend others, and not all of them are pretty.
I have you, Magnus. I'll always have you.
But moving on to the other dramatic power couple of the show, Scott and Jean are honestly at their best here. Like, Cyclops is finally given a good adaptation after years of getting shafted. We see how he tries to be the leader of the X-Men and is kind of just saddled with the Professor's legacy. He's an actual badass here, and you think for a second, okay, he's the Boy Scout of the team, the Captain America, but then we start to get into his love life, and oh boy is this shit rough.
Scott?
Dude, say anything. Like, it's so funny watching Scott drop the ball whenever he's just put on the spot. These circumstances are insane. His wife's a clone, his son needs to be sent to the future, and his father figure picked his arch enemy over him. It's just comedy gold to me, though you do fully understand why these things go the way that they do, as him and Jean were stagnant and he had so much more commonality with Madeline over his current Jean that it felt right that those two would be the ones that would talk. I honestly thought for a second we were gonna get him choosing Madeline while Jean was going to pick a Wolverine. Well, Morph waited in the background. Cyclops has never been a character that I put too much energy into caring about, but this show was able to actually get me to care about him and his clusterfuck of a love life, with scenes that actually made me choke up just a little bit. From him being with Cable and us finally seeing his eyes, or him thinking he found Madeline only for it to be Emma instead. All these things got me, and I need to see where things go from here. While I'm hyping up Scott, we have to give our flowers to Jean Grey, and I have to apologize. After years of bad adaptations, I was sleeping way too much on this woman.
God damn.
Jean's in such a great place in this show. Well, yes, she has a lot of love drama going on, as is typical of redheads in Marvel. I think her strong sense of personality never fails to shine through. She is truly the team mom and all the fun things that come along with it. From telling the boys to get their shit over with so they can go save the world, to her powers feeling like they're straight out Mob 100. Jean was just straight up fantastic this season, even when her character is split between two different ones. As yeah, she got cloned, and now the original has to question her identity in a world where she is re-remembering everything of what she was and doesn't know what was her and what was the clone. Then on top of that, you have the love triangle that's actually a pentagon. So suddenly her relationships with everyone and who she may choose is way more interesting and is not as played out as it could be in other stories. And while it's all messy, her love and what Scott meant to her shines through in every scene that she has, even when she wants to rip his face off. The Summers family battle is hype, and I could also watch her maim Sinister 100 more times and still never be satisfied. Also, the Goblin Queen. This was something else. Side note, I'm really happy that they just had Madeline be controlled here. I'm usually the guy who hates mind control as a plot device to force a character to do something, as to me it kind of feels like a cheap option when having them do it intentionally is often way more interesting. But having peeped what happened in the comics, just the continual retcons and executive meddling, how Scott abandoned his wife and kid because Marvel just wanted the original X lineup to be back. Then she made a deal with the devil. Just having her be mind controlled so we'd have to spend too much time trying to justify all this bullshit. Yeah, that works for me. Similarly, the telepathic cheating works way better when it's just with Madeline here than if they somehow had to justify it being Emma Frost just for the comics. It fits the current story better, and I'm always down for changes, especially when the changes make things more coherent. But moving on to another MVP of the series, Storm's whole sabbatical to get her powers back is really solid. I don't think it fully clicked with me till the demon showed up, but then the terror of having this thing appear and try to tempt her into despair, it was chef's kiss. Her and Forge hookup was quick, but wasn't too abrupt, but this whole sequence did give me Beyond Two Souls flashbacks. Storm, though, going through an identity crisis after losing her powers, rediscovering who she is, reclaiming her power in order to end the demon and save Forge. While I can see a lot of people not really liking her storyline as it does feel so disconnected from the others, I can see people having that takeaway, but the payoff. Storm getting her powers, her original costume, it is absolutely worth it. Also, she turned the desert into glass. A+, no notes. But to wrap things up, Logan being a supporting character, that's great. He's the violent pragmatist who's balanced out by being in a team of mostly idealists. Morph is in love with him, and playing it off as a joke. Their confession as Jean was soul-shattering. We'll probably do a video on it. Nightcrawler, fun guy, comes in late in the series, but again, it's Nightcrawler. He's always gonna be fun, and now he has swords. And it's great. And oh look, an adaptation that remembered him and Rogue are siblings. I think this means an angel has to get back their wings. Jubilee's Mojo episode was also great. I'm glad they got the original voice actress to voice her older self, which neat little touch. Sunspot's arc is too real on how it handles coming out to your family and being accepted on a very conditional basis. I think his turn to join Magneto is one of the few things that I don't think fully click for me. Like, it works, but it isn't seamless, as all the pieces are there, but I just need one moment, one talk, to make him go from bitter to siding with Magneto bitter. As without it, and with all the attention Rogue has gotten, her siding with Magneto feels like the big climactic choice, so the Sunspot join just feels like the appetizer in comparison. It's not wrong, but one thing has clearly been built up more than the other, and I feel like one talk could have had him reaffirm his connection to the X-Men and Jubilee rather than this.
I massacre you freaks and you're recruiting me? You're suicidal.
I did roll my eyes though at them offering Bastion a chance after he committed genocide, which honestly is an L I just have to take, as it would be thematically incoherent for them to just kill Bastion here without trying to reach out to them. For them to throw away another mutant who got dealt a bad hand by life, and yeah, real life put the fucker down. But in a story about how we need to be better to reach out to help others, just crushing the tin can without trying to show empathy would have felt off. This was the right choice, but my culturally ingrained bias for punitive punishment self couldn't contain a groan, even though the story needed the X-Men to at least try this. Overall, I love this series. This was such a great show to follow week to week, and I cannot wait for season 2. But the speed that this series is going and burning through stories and characters, I'm curious to see how they'll keep up that momentum. But Apocalypse is coming back, he's gathering his horsemen, and if the next season is half as good as this one, I'm going to love every second of it.